The Indianapolis Colts came up just short of beating the Houston Texans on Sunday, but Anthony Richardson showed how explosive the offense could be. So, what should we make of Richardson's performance? And what happened to the Colts defense? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore with no voice, absolutely no voice from attending that Colts game yesterday. So I do apologize because I'm going to sound like hot garbage this entire episode, guys. But I'm here joined by my co-host and partner in crime, Drake Wally. Drake, I know that the Colts lost yesterday, and there are definitely a lot of things that the Colts are going to need to clean up, and we'll talk about those tonight. But for some reason, to me, I don't feel like Colts fans should be as down about this loss as what I've seen and heard about on social media so far in the 27 hours since the game ended. There are a lot of things that the Colts do certainly need to clean up and some areas of concern. But what do we always say? It's all about Anthony Richardson, and boy, did he show out yesterday.
Yeah, and we'll get into it, but the guy didn't even complete 10 passes, but he somehow eclipses 200 yards passing. All right, we'll get into why that happened, but yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about defensively, offensively. Obviously, we'll dive into the star of the show, which is Richardson, but there's some guys on defense that played their heart out. It's just, as a whole, I think that we're going to really get into how unique it was that the way the Texans approached this offensively and how the Colts got beat, not in the way you'd think they would.
Yeah, exactly. So we are going to dive in to everything from the Colts Texans matchup yesterday. Obviously, going to talk about that defense and going up against CJ Stroud, Joe Mixon, and that run defense that was pretty putrid yesterday. But of course, we're going to talk about Anthony Richardson and the offense, the ups and the downs that the offense went through, and what are our main takeaways from this game yesterday as the Colts unfortunately extended their league leading streak of week 1 losses to 11 straight years. But let's dive into the chat to see who is here with us tonight. As always, Truitt getting us started out with a super chat. Thank you so much, Truitt, for your $5 donation. And Truitt says, Ben, but don't break defense has got to go. On the bright side, happy for Alec. Yes, Alec Pierce showed out yesterday. We're going to definitely give some props and talk about Alec Pierce and what exactly he did yesterday. We all know about the touchdowns, but really what this could mean for Alec Pierce this year. Truitt, thank you so much for all of your support. Tom Williams saying AR's arm is an absolute weapon along with his legs. Loved what I saw from Ant during the game yesterday. Not bad from someone with only 4 professional starts in his career. Yes, yesterday was Anthony Richardson's 18th start since high school, guys. So there's still a long ways to go for Anthony Richardson in his develop. So NFL Nerd is here. Can we do a weekly check-in on PRWR and compare it to last year? PRWR. I'm not sure what exactly that pass rush win rate. Pass rush win rate. There we go. Just took my brain a little bit to catch up. That's right. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Maybe Stats Matt can pull them up because I know Stats Matt is in here as well. Yes, he is. As he says, Andrew is being a wuss already. You're supposed to be at your best in adversity. Well, listen here, Stats Matt. If I can pull up the comment on the screen. There we go. Listen here, Stats Matt. Inside of Lucas Oil Stadium yesterday, my watch was telling me that it was well over 100 decibels. So you can tell it if you were there in the quote unquote loud house yesterday, you know how loud it was. So, but I appreciate you being here, Stats Matt. NFL Nerd also saying also highly concerned about DeForest Buckner. We'll talk about DeForest Buckner and why NFL Nerd may be concerned about that as well. Yim, hey, Horseshoe Huddle fan, awesome game despite the loss. Definitely a mixed bag, but a lot to be optimistic about. I completely agree. And then finally, the CFO, Malik Willis versus the Colts in week 2. If that's the case, week 2 is a must win for the Indianapolis Colts if Jordan Love cannot go as what is being currently reported. So as we dive in, guys, please make sure to go follow us on all of our socials. For the love of God, it'll probably help my voice get better. So go like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, go follow at Colts_SI on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday, and if breaking news drops, because you're not going to want to miss it. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, wherever you're listening to us today, Apple, Spotify, Google, please subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. So Drake, let's dive right into it, buddy. The Colts lost a tight battle yesterday to the Houston Texans, 29-27. You were really close. You were really, really close with your prediction. You said it was going to be Texans 30, Colts 27, if I remember correctly. So you were 1 point away from that. But ultimately, I think a lot of before we really dive into this, I do want to give props to the Houston Texans because we've been seeing a lot of comments. The Colts didn't do this, Colts didn't do that, and certainly the Colts have areas that they need to improve on. But that Houston Texans team is good on the other side of the football, and they played very well. They played sound football, really, in all 3 phases.
Yeah, and I think that it'd be ridiculous to not give CJ Stroud even more props. In fact, in his 3 games against the Colts, he hasn't even thrown a pick. He's got 6 touchdown passes with no interceptions. All he's done is take care of the football. He was accurate again. They ran the ball almost more yards than they passed it. So, that offensive line and Danielle Hunter especially, holy crap, man. You talk about a guy that was every time that there was a pressure on Anthony Richardson, look no further than Danielle Hunter just beating the crap out of Braden Smith on that side.
Yeah. Definitely, but let's start with Anthony Richardson, of course, because he was the star of the show yesterday for the Indianapolis Colts. Now, if you look at the stat line, and I have seen some articles out there from some major news outlets that you can tell they didn't watch the game and they just looked at the stat line. But Anthony Richardson, not a very good stat line. If you're looking at the completion percentage, 9 for 19, that's only a 47% completion percentage, and frankly, that does have to be better. That does have to be better. He does need to do a better job of completing more passes, continually moving the chains, and hitting those layups, hitting those easy throws. But of those 9 completions, 212 yards. That is an incredible. I've got the number right here, Drake, 11.2 yards per completion, and I think his air yards per attempt were like 11.5. Just an absolute absurd number, just screaming explosiveness from the Colts quarterback. Had 2 touchdowns. The interception when he was trying to throw it to Kylan Granson, and Granson slipped on the play. There was a lot of issues with the new turf yesterday. A lot of players were slipping on the new turf at Lucas Oil Stadium. I think once the turf gets worked in, that will subside. And then 56 yards and had the rushing touchdown, and they had towards the end of the 4th quarter on the ground, So, but Drake, the word of the day for Richardson and this Colts offense was explosive. 3 pass plays of over 50 yards. And we got to talk about the throw that everyone is talking about. The first touchdown of the season for Anthony Richardson, a 60-yard bomb to Alec Pierce that traveled over 65 yards in the air. And according to NFL Next Gen Stats, the third longest air yards in a throw since in the database's history, going all the way back to 2016. Drake, I'll tell you what, when I say Lucas Oil Stadium erupted when that touchdown was thrown, I don't know if I've heard it that loud since the Andrew Luck years inside of there.
Yeah, and just to we're not being biased on this channel when we say this, and I think I'm speaking for Andrew when I say this as well. That may be the best throw I've ever seen. I mean,
it's pretty incredible.
It's pretty damn close if it's not. He barely even winds back to throw it. There's pressure right on his doorstep. And if you watch it slowly, he goes down and avoids a hand almost like a boxer and just looks up and he just throws it. And it barely leaves his arm. And that thing his arm barely throws it. It just launches. And it's not even that Pierce caught it. It's that he caught it in stride. He caught it at the 1 yard line. He caught it when only in a place that the receiver can get it. That's ridiculous. Like that kind of throw is is absolutely stupid. And, you know, 2 of his completions accounted for 114 of those passing yards that were both for touchdowns. So all that I have to say is this. There's still time that he has to develop. And Colts fans, this is still a team that might not even average the age of 24, 25 when you put all their roster together. They're young as hell. They're going to go through games where you're like, what the heck is going on? But, man, the potential, once Richardson finds it, once he can hit some of those easier throws, my God, just imagine.
Yeah, and I want to throw this in here. The first stat of the day. Pierce's touchdown pass only had a 28.5% completion probability and had Pierce himself had 2 of the top 8 most improbable completions all weekend. Just shout out to Alec Pierce for and this is kind of what we wanted to see out of Alec Pierce with Anthony Richardson. But and here's another one from Stats Matt. AR's average completed air yards was 17.3 yards. For reference, Minshew averaged 5.7 last season and had 3 games over 7, and his best was 8.9 in a game. So just quite a different situation than it was last year. And you could see it. The offense looked much different than it did last year with Gardner Minshew at the helm. And we expected that. We expected to see a more explosive offense. We just didn't expect to see Richardson in the game 1 slip and fall down and then just take an absolute launch it all the way down the field. The ball just kept going and going and going until it found Alec Pierce. The other touchdown to Ashton Dulin was an absolute dart to Dulin in a very tight window that he was able to take 54 yards to the house. In that final drive where the Colts are trying to get down the field and score to get within 1 possession of the Texans to get within a field goal. Another throw deep down the field to Alec Pierce, who again jumped up and got it for a 57-yard gain. That's what you get with Anthony Richardson. You get the explosive plays. You get a guy that has the talent and ability, not only with his arm, but with his legs, that defenses have to account for and have to guard every blade of grass on the field, because he can literally get the ball pretty much anywhere on the field, and that's really hard to stop, and it just brings that explosive factor to this offense in a way that was never really prevalent last year as soon as Anthony Richardson went down with that injury.
Yeah, and you know, we can also talk about this now since we're covering Richardson. He is probably 70% to 80% of why the Colts even stayed within a score of that game. All right, I mean, they just didn't look good. They didn't look good up front. Zaire Franklin was getting his butt kicked by the linemen once they were getting to the second level. The secondary kind of looked, you know, a little bit hapless at times. Nico Collins, again, we'll get to that, did his thing. Anthony Richardson, guys, he went out there in pretty much his first start since week 5 of last year, and he just shouldered the entire load, okay, while he's trying to develop as a 22-year-old. So my point is this. Give it time, because it's still a young team and their field general is young. But, man, Steichen clearly went out there and said, hey, throw the ball deep. We're going to go down the field with the ball. We're going to challenge the defense. And, man, Alec Pierce had definitely his best career day. Three catches on all 3 targets, by the way.
Yeah, and then the thing is, I mean, we're talking about how well Anthony Richardson played. There was still a good amount of bad. You know, there was a roller coaster for Anthony Richardson yesterday, because that 9 for 19, that doesn't come without some misses, and he had misses. 2 of them were really crucial misses to Adonai Mitchell. Mitchell was made on a double move, wide open for a touchdown, and Richardson just airmailed it on the second throw to Mitchell. That would have ended up being a 70-yard touchdown. I think if Mitchell doesn't get held, doesn't get hit with the illegal contact on that play, that Mitchell probably does bring that in at least. I don't know if he's able to bring it in and continue to run, but I think he is able to bring that in, because it was probably about a half step up too far for Mitchell, and that illegal contact did definitely messed up the timing of that route. But on the play where they're inside their own 30, I think it was inside their own 30, and Mitchell, just a fantastic move to get wide open heading to the right corner of the end zone, and Richardson just sails the football. Gotta have that one. And then there was another one on the first drive of the game, 4th down. He's looking over to the right side where Mitchell is. That's on Richardson too. just completely misses Adonai Mitchell, the throw was there. Gotta have that. And yes, we know that Anthony Richardson is going to miss some throws. Even Shane Steichen said it. He's going to miss some throws, just like any of the other quarterbacks in the NFL miss throws. But again, it's you want to see that change. You want to see that continually get better throughout the season. You want to see the timing get better. You want to see him be able to hit his guys and make, again, I'm going to go back to keep saying that, make the layups. You want to see him make those easy throws, because we know he can hit the explosive throws. We saw it numerous times yesterday. That's not a question. The deep shots and those explosive plays, he needs to make the easy ones too. And I think our colleague Zach Hicks made a really good point, talking about how this should, as Anthony Richardson settles down a little bit and as the game starts to slow down with Richardson, as he gets more reps, you should see him start to hit those more and more, just because he's not getting as amped up, and he's settling down, and that just should come naturally with playing the position more, getting more live reps, and like I said, as the game continues to slow down for him, that'll happen eventually. But until then, you just kind of have to take the good with the bad as Anthony Richardson continues to develop.
Yeah, and look, if you have to, you want to always be able to say for your quarterback, especially if they're young and they're that young, that you have to dial back their potential athleticism because they have so much they can do. You might need to dial that back a bit. Hey, that ball needs to be more precise than it does power. It needs to be more of an arc than it does a laser. And Mitchell, guys, here's something real encouraging. He targeted him the second most of any receiver outside of the name Michael Pittman Jr. Okay. He only caught one, though. So he got targeted 5 times, but people might have gotten lost in the fact that he really wanted number 10 to get that football. And he was open. Mitchell was torching his competition in that game. So I think that once you get the timing, once you get the experience, like our colleague said, Zach Hicks, it's those gimme throws. Once you start hitting those underneath throws, it's just going to make those deep throws open up, which we've already seen him hit the hard stuff, which is encouraging, guys. Now he just needs to get the easy stuff, which usually it's the other way around, which is why you can't really find starting quarterbacks growing on trees.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say you could be really, really encouraged what you saw to Anthony Richardson yesterday. And even to your point, without Anthony Richardson, the Colts probably aren't even in that game yesterday. You can say that, but also say that there's still a lot of room for improvement. And Anthony Richardson still made quite a few mistakes in that game that I think he can learn from and get better from. But let's talk about the leading receiver for the Colts yesterday, and Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce, fantastic game. This is the deep threat that we've been wanting to see out of Alec Pierce. This is what we talked about last season when the Colts drafted Anthony Richardson, and how it was going to be, this was going to be a really good thing for Alec Pierce to have somebody with that type of arm that can take advantage of Alec Pierce's skill sets of being that deep threat, being a jump ball guy down the field. And this is what we wanted to see. 3 catches, 125 yards for Alec Pierce, and the touchdown. That's an incredible average of 41.7 yards per catch. Obviously, that will go down as the season goes along. But for all the talk about Alec Pierce this offseason, especially after Adonai Mitchell was drafted, about how Alec Pierce is done, Alec Pierce should be benched, Alec Pierce shouldn't have a spot on this team. Good for Alec Pierce going out there and showing that he still has what we've been saying. He's still going to have a role with this offense, and a valuable one at that, because without Alec Pierce yesterday catching those balls from Anthony Richardson, making those plays, again, Colts aren't even close in this game.
Yeah, and it makes me real proud that I got that jersey a long time ago, because now I can pull it out of my closet. The Alec Pierce jersey, man, it gets to come out. I'm really proud of him, man. You go out there, and if you wanted a sample of what Alec Pierce can be in a Shane Steichen offense with Anthony Richardson running things, you got it. And Zach Hicks, since you mentioned him, we'll bring him up again. He had an incredible tweet that Jimmy Ward. No, it is Jimmy Ward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jimmy Ward, veteran safety. He's not an otherworldly talent, really has never been, but he's kind of like out of his prime, but he's still a serviceable safety. Alec Pierce was just freaking posterizing that guy all game. He was making him look silly. He said that he's going to see Alec Pierce in his dreams. So boy, oh boy, once you get Josh Downs back, once you get Adonai Mitchell kind of working more in that wide receiver 4 role, because I think Pierce earned that wide receiver 3 role and earned more snaps if he wasn't already getting them. I think that you can start to really get yourself one hell of a wide receiver core here, because Pittman was also targeted 8 times, but he only got 4 for about 31. So I think that you saw a nice sample of what you're going to get from Anthony Richardson. I think if Colts fans, if you walked into this game thinking you were going to see a super polished quarterback, I mean, maybe pump the brakes a little bit. I think it's going to be better against Green Bay, though.
Yeah, and I also, I mean, I don't think I kind of disagree with you a little bit there, saying that Alec Pierce has gotten the wide receiver 3 role. Again, I don't really call by wide receiver 1, 2, and 3. They do have their specific, roles. Like Pittman's the Z, Pierce and Mitchell are the X. They're going to be used in different situations. Downs will be in the slot when he comes back. But I do think that it just shows the role that Alec Pierce has on this team, and that's being that deep threat. Adonai Mitchell can do that, but Adonai Mitchell can work the middle of the field a little bit more. We also saw Alec Pierce be able to win short. I thought that was good to see. He's just carrying it over from camp, and it's not a bad thing to have multiple wide receivers, so that way you don't have to have Pittman out there on every single play. You can have Pittman get a rest. There were times yesterday, like on that play to Alec Pierce, it was the Colts went max protect on that one, and they had the players on the field were Alec Pierce and Ashton Doolin. Okay, so it wasn't like it was Pittman and Pearson or Pittman and Mitchell out there, always one of those guys with Pittman. Pittman didn't play 100% of the snaps yesterday. Pittman was out there for, I think, around 89% of the snaps. So because of that, and because you have the different skill sets with these guys, you can mix and match them, which I think is really, really good. I think that makes this offense more dynamic. You don't always have to have the same guys in the same spots, because you can put different guys and mismatch different guys out there depending on the formation. So I think that's good. I think it just reinforces Alec Pierce's role as the deep threat guy for this team, and I don't think that's going to change. So people are expecting Alec Pierce to kind of go back, and you're expecting him to not get as many snaps as Adonai Mitchell right away. That's just not going to happen. There's an obvious role for Alec Pierce on this team, and he does that role very, very well.
Yeah, and one thing I was going to say is you're not going to see Alec Pierce playing the slot. Okay, so like that, you'll see Adonai Mitchell playing the slot, and that's where he kind of filled in, and so he's also going to play outside. And I do have to say, I agree to a degree. I think the excitement's there. I think that you're going to have games though that are still going to be 2 catches, 5 targets for 14 yards. You're still going to have games like that, but I think it's going to be easy for Alec Pierce to have a career year. Easy.
I think that the opportunity is definitely there. Pierce just has to go out there and seize it. Patrick, you're an absolute menace in the chat. Unbelievable, dude. I love it. Stats, Matt, another stat. Alec Pierce is currently 3rd in receiving yards in the NFL and 1st in yards per catch. I would hope he's 1st in yards per catch after that. After 41.7 yards per catch is absolutely absurd.
Stupid.
Good for Alec Pierce. But let's talk the other part of the offense that really wasn't up to snuff. Drake was the run game, particularly with Jonathan Taylor, because Anthony Richardson and his scrambles, he did fine, 56 yards, 9.3 yards per carry and the touchdown. But Jonathan Taylor was not expecting this. I was expecting JT to have a much bigger game. 16 carries for 48 yards, only 3 yards per carry, had the touchdown on the one-play drive for the Colts after Sagunalubi blocked the punt. Hell of a play, by the way, by Sagunalubi on special teams, and it really turned the game around for the Colts and started getting them some momentum. But I looking at the film, and I haven't been able to watch the entire game on film, but I've been able to watch, I would say, most of the film throughout the day today. And it's not like Jonathan Taylor was leaving yards on the field, Drake. Jonathan Taylor, those 48 yards that he got, that's really all that was available out there. Just, again, credit to the Houston Texans. They did a really good job of stymieing this Colts rushing attack when the ball was given to Jonathan Taylor. And I don't think it was the Colts offensive line maybe holds some of the blame, but it's not like the Colts offensive line was bad yesterday. Pass protection, they were phenomenal. Yes, Anthony Richardson was sacked, twice all game, but other than that, they kept Anthony Richardson clean and upright. Richardson had all the time in the world to throw the ball. And this offensive line was working in sync. But the guys on the other side get paid too. And I really just think the Texans put an emphasis on trying to stop Jonathan Taylor, and they were successful.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give D'Amico Ryans his crew credit, okay? You know, he's an absolute menace when it comes to defensive coordinating. So that's not hard to believe that he did that. Now, I will say that, yeah, Jonathan Taylor ripped him apart the first time, but the Texans, like you said, I like that you gave credit to him because I think that Jonathan Taylor fought his ass off. I mean, you got to remember that run from Richardson when he scored a touchdown. He got hit at the line of scrimmage by two guys, and he had no one around him, and his giant body just powered his way into the end zone. So the Colts fought. They fought for every one of those yards. Okay, so I think that they got to predicate the running game being a little bit more successful with Jonathan Taylor. Maybe it's been a while. Maybe it's just that first game type thing. But man, if you have another game where it's 16 carries for 48 yards, you only had a long of 7 yards. That's a whole lot of walls you are hitting all game long.
Yeah, when you combine the fact that the running game with Jonathan Taylor really couldn't get going yesterday, and you combine that with the fact that the Colts couldn't really keep a consistent passing offense going. Sure, they hit the explosive plays, but they weren't able to consistently move the chains down the field with the passing game or the running game. That's what ended up. That was the perfect recipe for the Texans absolutely dominating the time of possession yesterday. The Texans had the football for 40 minutes. 40 minutes. The Colts had it for 20. So twice, the Texans had it twice as long as the Colts did. That, I mean, I'm sure that definitely contributed to some of the defensive struggles, which we're going to talk about next. But Drake, I mean, I think this is something that the Colts can learn, can kind of learn and need to adjust to, because while Anthony Richardson can still run the football, teams are going to focus in on Jonathan Taylor too and trying to stop that. The Colts have to be able to adjust to that. And even though, like I said, the other guys get paid too, this is a very good offensive line and you're paying your running back a lot of money. You still got to be able to go out there and execute, because it is such a big part of your game.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to put everything on Anthony Richardson like yesterday, more often than not, it's really hard for a quarterback to do everything and win the game. So I think that Jonathan Taylor's success is directly related to the success of the entire Indianapolis Colts offense for the rest of the season.
Now let's talk about the defensive side of the football, and here's where a lot of the criticism has come from. Definitely, some of it warranted. Other parts of it, I don't think as warranted, and we'll dive into it here. We want to start with the front seven. Drake, pass rush, really good. I'd give it a thumbs up. You look at what happened yesterday. They got 4 sacks of CJ Stroud, 1.5 by DeForest Buckner, a sack each by Kwity Paye and Tyquan Lewis, and then a half sack for Dayo Odeyingbo. They had 10 quarterback hits on CJ Stroud, and out of the I think Stroud threw it. Yeah, out of the 32 times that Stroud threw the football, the Colts had 18 total pressures. So they were getting consistent pressure on CJ Stroud for most of the game. So and while Stroud did have some success, CJ Stroud's a very good quarterback. CJ Stroud is going to make some of those plays, just like Anthony Richardson is going to make some of those plays, like he did yesterday, falling down and still being able to complete a 60-yard touchdown. So in my opinion, in terms of the pass rush and the pressure, it was consistently there. And that's what you want to see out of this Colts pass rush. So in terms of the pass rush, I think they did a really solid job there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it right here. You got 1.5 from Buckner. You got another sack from Lewis. Guess what, everybody? Kwity Paye got another sack, all right? So you've got production here, and yet again, they sacked CJ 4 times. I mean, that's over half of his dropbacks. There's a Colt within the vicinity of his throwing motion that's doing something to disrupt that. So that's congratulations to that. But, man, I just want to really quick point out DeForest Buckner. I mean, yet again, okay, all he does is he just went out there and absolutely dominated the pass rush. He looked fantastic. You're just hoping that he can return from that back injury.
Buckner had a really, really good game, and I was talking to some people at the game, and it just seemed like every time there was a play, that needed to be made, or it seems like Buckner was just around the ball. When the game started, Joe Mixon gets a handoff, Buckner comes free, and he opens up that long wingspan and really just swallowed up Joe Mixon. Buckner was an absolute menace yesterday, and definitely and the thing is, we're not surprised about that because we all know how good of a player DeForest Buckner is, and we have known about how good of a player DeForest Buckner is for some time. And then I see Patrick's super chat, and I want to talk about it after we kind of discuss the run defense, because I think it fits in really, really good there. So hang tight, Patrick. The run defense was abysmal yesterday, Drake. No other words for it. The 212 yards allowed for the Indianapolis Colts, just unacceptable to allow that many yards on the ground. 159 of those rushing yards were allowed to Joe Mixon. I was one of the people, and I mean, I'll eat crow right now. I was one of the people that said in the offseason, when the Texans traded for Joe Mixon, I didn't think that was really going to have that big of an impact. I thought, Joe Mixon, yes, he's a solid running back, but he's not going to do major damage, especially to this Colts team. I ate my words yesterday. Joe Mixon, 159 yards. He averaged, let me get the stats up here. He averaged a whopping 5.3 yards per carry, got that touchdown on 30 carries. Joe Mixon did to the Colts basically what Jonathan Taylor did to the Texans last year. There was only a 38-yard difference in their two performances. So it was the Texans the Texans offensive line absolutely dominated the Colts front seven in the run game, continually pushing the interior defensive linemen out of the picture. It seemed like every time Grover Stewart was subbed out of the game, the Texans and CJ Stroud would check to a run play right up the middle. And when the Colts are putting in Taven Bryan, and Taven Bryan's playing nearly a fourth of the snaps, that's just smart football. And that's terrible football by the Colts defense. We've known this for some time. Why the hell is Taven Bryan even on the roster, let alone playing 25% of the snaps when he's that big of a liability? But I digress. The linebackers, Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, very piss poor in run defense yesterday, and that's kind of surprising because Franklin and Speed were the main ones talking and all that trash against CJ Stroud. They were the loudest of the Colts defense, the ones that had the biggest problem with Stroud talking all off season, and then they go out and have that performance like that. It's not a good look. Just objectively, it's not a good look. So Colts have some soul searching to do, and I think they know that. The veterans on this team know that. Franklin, Buckner, Speed, Stewart, they all know that it wasn't good enough there, but it was definitely an eye-opening experience and something that shouldn't happen considering the amount of draft capital and the amount of money that's been poured into this front seven, Drake.
Yeah, and look, credit to Joe Mixon again, because, you look back on that Jonathan Taylor game, he had a 41, 42, 45-yard touchdown run.
Right.
Joe Mixon's long was 13 yards.
Death by 1,000 cuts in the run game yesterday.
All that he did was rip off 3, 4, 5, 6-yard gains all damn day. Just constant. You saw him constantly getting right there in Zaire's face, getting ready. And he ran over Nick Cross once. I mean, Nick Cross went up, square up. It's just these two in a gap. Joe Mixon just punches Nick Cross right in his chest and just knocks him clean over, gets 2 extra yards. I mean, Joe Mixon, I'm not going to lie. I've seen enough Joe Mixon in Cincinnati that when he was signed, I'll also eat crow with you, Andrew. We're co-hosts. We're buddies. Let's eat crow together. I was like, oh, well, they got Stephon Diggs. You got Danielle Hunter. You got Aziz Al-Shaair. You got all these guys that are more prevalent to what Houston wants to do than Joe Mixon. He's going to be a committee guy. Oh, no. Dameon Pierce was nothing. The rest of those guys were nothing. It was the Joe Mixon show.
And I do want to give a shout out to Nick Cross yesterday, Drake, because honestly, when you look at the run defense grades by Pro Football Focus, the best run defender for the Colts yesterday was DeForest Buckner. No shock there. And I think we can all agree, if you watch the tape, if you were watching that game, you would agree that DeForest Buckner was the best run defender on the team. The second highest graded run defender for the Colts yesterday was Nick Cross. The leading tackler for the Colts yesterday was Nick Cross with a whopping 14 tackles. Nick Cross played a damn good game. Nick Cross really played a damn good game. Now, I don't remember what exactly his coverage grade was. I mean, it was average at best. I think it was around like Okay. Yeah, it was below average. It was about 49.6, but as a run defender and what the Colts were asking him to do as a tackler, Nick Ross did pretty well. And even though he did get run over by Joe Mixon, I warned a couple times. I mean, credit to him for staying with the play and for still bringing Joe Mixon down on those plays where he was run over. So I do want to give a shout out to Nick Cross because I thought Cross played a pretty good game yesterday, all things considered. But yeah, Drake, I mean, overall, this run defense just has to be better. It does. And if this is the new normal, then the Colts are in trouble, which finally brings me to Patrick's question. Thanks, buddy, for all of your support as always. And I'm sorry I didn't get to your question sooner, but this ties in perfectly here. Do we think the shift to a dominant pass rush by absolutely atrocious run defense was the result of game plan scheme from Bradley or Partridge's focus in camp? Sorry, words are hard with no voice. And that's a very, very good question. So Drake, what do you think? I'm interested to kind of hear what your thoughts on this. Do you think that the Colts? Did you think the Colts focus too much on bringing a pass rush and kind of are putting the run defense on the back burner, or do you think it was something within the scheme? And I know you probably haven't had a chance to watch the tape yet, or do you think it was just a bad game by this Colts run defense and something that you think is eventually going to get fixed?
If I had to answer, I would probably say it was a game plan approach from Charlie Partridge, just because it's his first game as a defensive front coach. And I'm sure he was like, we cannot let CJ Stroud beat us. We've got Grover, we've got DeForest, and we've got Raekwon. And then you have a paper bag named Taven Bryan. Okay. So you've got all of these guys on the interior. I think that they wanted to stop CJ Stroud. And I think that Houston picked up after there was a couple solid gains, not just good, solid chunk plays, like 7-8 yard gains from Mixon. And they just ran with that. And they really set up CJ Stroud well with that ground game, because outside of that, I think if they can't run the ball, I think Colts win that game. So
yeah, and I don't know if we'll really know the actual correct answer for this.
Yeah. That's a tough one, but a good question.
Yeah, I personally just am leaning that it was just a bad game all around, because it wasn't anything specific that the Colts were doing that I think. Like, it wasn't anything specific scheme wise that I've seen on the film that was taking them out of the run play. It was more so the Texans offensive line was just doing a damn good job of really getting the jump on the front seven and pushing them into the opposite direction. We had a lot of the plays we saw, either the Texans offensive line was going all the way left or all the way right, and it was like it was going to be a stretch outside play. And then it seemed like once they kind of got into their position, were able to get all the Colts going one way, Joe Mixon would just cut it right back on the backside of the offensive line. Now, I do think that could potentially be changed if the Colts because the Colts have such an attacking front, that it might play it might play some role in that, but it's not like Charlie Partridge is completely changing the aspect of what this defensive line wants to do. I think it's still an attacking front that the same was last year. I just think there is a little bit more emphasis on rushing the passer, but you could tell pretty quickly whether it's going to be a pass or a run once the football is snapped, and by how the offensive line is kind of lining up. So I think a lot of it was just, again, credit to the Houston Texans offensive line for really getting in position and forcing their will on the Indianapolis Colts front seven. And then, when you have the linebackers like Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed getting completely forced out of the play at times, that's definitely not going to help either. There needs to be better linebacker play all the way around. So if you want to point to a specific coach, Charlie Partridge definitely has a role in that, but but Richard Smith there, the linebackers coach, is also the run game coordinator. That definitely has a role in all of this as well. So I think it's not only the coaches need to go back to the drawing board to kind of see how they are defending the run, the players do too, because ultimately the players have to go out there and execute. And by all intents and purposes, most of them did not. And I mean, when you're looking at, I know, like we always say, Pro Football Focus, the grades aren't the Bible, but it gives you a good indication of how these guys were playing overall. Zaire Franklin got a 28 for his run defense yesterday, a 28, the worst on the team. And you know what, Drake, I kind of agree with that. Zaire Franklin, definitely not one of his best games yesterday, especially against the run. But Patrick, fantastic question, buddy. Really, really appreciate all of your support, and thanks for helping spur a really good conversation here. So Drake, we talked about the run defense here, and now we want to talk about the pass defense, kind of in the secondary. I might be in the minority in this, but to me, overall, if you're looking at the overall performance of the Colts secondary, it wasn't terrible. It really wasn't. They didn't play a terrible game. Sometimes you're just going up against a really accurate quarterback and really good wide receivers, especially like on that final third down, that third down throw at the end of the game when the Colts are trying to force a punt to the Texans. A perfect throw by CJ Stroud to Nico Collins, who made a perfect catch. And Jalen Jones was in coverage there. I saw people flaming Jalen Jones for it. It's really hard to cover that play better than Jalen Jones did. It was just a perfect throw, better throw, and a better catch. And sometimes that happens in the NFL. So in my opinion, the secondary, was the secondary outstanding? No, it wasn't outstanding. But did the secondary play terrible, and was it the main cause for this Colts loss yesterday? I don't think so. I think the main cause for this Colts loss was, again, the run defense. That was probably priority one. Then you could probably put some faulty offensive execution at number 3, and just some miscues. And the secondary probably close to that. But I think by far and away it was more of a problem with the run defense and not being able to get off the field. That was more a bigger issue than the secondary. However, I will say this: the Colts pass defense definitely gave up completions and conversions at very inopportune times. And that's something that Shane Steichen did mention, that, well, you can play pretty well most of the game when it's crunch time and it's in those plays that really matter. You got to go out there and execute. And that's something that at times the Colts secondary and Colts pass defense did not do yesterday.
Yeah, and you're looking at it's not talked about enough, the inopportune times where you're 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, and they convert. And let me see here. I'm trying to see what. Okay, so yeah, the Texans were 7 out of 14, Colts were 5 out of 10. But those 7, a lot of those did happen in the second half. And also, here's a fun fact about Nico Collins. In that game, he caught half of CJ Stroud's passing yards. All right.
Yeah.
The rest were, I think second was Tank Dell with 40. And then after that, it's just kind of like a ho-hum. But in his last 3 games, he has 458 receiving yards, 22 receptions, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he is now the boogeyman, in my opinion, to the Colts. And on that play where Jalen Jones did not disrupt it, I don't think you could have played better coverage. You're not just talking about the out of bounds. You're talking about 5 yards past it where Collins is stuck all the way out like that. And so is Jones. I mean, Jones played that like a blanket on a fire, people. It's just you're dealing with a guy that I truly think, and Andrew truly thinks, might be a top 10 receiver in the NFL.
Here's a really good stat from Stats Matt. For people trashing the pass defense, the Colts were 9th in time to pressure. So like we said, they were getting after CJ Stroud, also reflected by 4th in pressure percentage and 4th in sack percentage. The front 7 were doing their job against CJ Stroud. And the most important, they were 8th in average separation allowed. The defensive backs weren't the problem. And again, sometimes that's just the case, guys, when you see sometimes good football players make good football plays. CJ Stroud made some great plays yesterday. So did Nico Collins. I will say, on the bomb from Stroud to Nico Collins, again, it was on Juju Brents. That's an area that Juju Brents, I think he would even admit that he's got to be better at. He can't give up those big plays. Nick Cross is back there in coverage too. Again, Nick Cross got to be better. Those guys are young. Hopefully they figure it out. I've been impressed by Nick Cross so far in terms of his run defense, and his tackling was yesterday. He's got to up it in pass coverage as well. But to say that this Colts secondary was the reason that the Colts lost this game, I just can't. I have a hard time believing that, and that's why seeing the game in person, by watching the film today, going through the whole game, it wasn't. Yes, are there areas that the Colts defensive backs need to improve? Absolutely, but is it the reason is it the main reason the Colts lost the game yesterday? No. A lot of what the reason the Colts lost the game yesterday, yes, run defense, execution on offense, untimely completions or conversions that they allowed. At the same time, that Texans team is a very good team. And they're playing football too. So sometimes that's just what it is. You got beat by a team that was playing well. And I think a lot of what happened yesterday was because the Colts got beat by a team that was playing really well. Doesn't mean that the Colts can't beat this Texans team, because I don't think the Colts lose if they allow 212 yards on the ground. Anthony Richardson starts hitting those layups, the Colts don't lose either. So I think if anything, that's kind of getting to our final points here of what we can take away from this game. I think if, as a Colts fan, you should be encouraged. Does the week 1 loss suck? Yeah, it does, probably, for you. Does this Colts team, do you want to beat the Texans, a rival that talked a lot of crap all off season? Absolutely. But at the same time, you're talking about your young quarterback who's making his 5th career start in the NFL, his 18th start since high school, and he went out there and he lit it up. And he led this offense again went out there 27 points and almost beat the division champion Texans, who a lot of people are crowning as their dark horse Super Bowl team in the AFC, or could reach the AFC championship game. A team that made a lot of outside acquisitions this summer. Or this spring, I should say, for this team. And the Colts took them to the wire. And the Colts definitely did not play their best game. Anthony Richardson is just going to get better. This run defense for the Colts, you can assume, is going to get better. The hope is this secondary, the more they play, is going to get better. Josh Downs wasn't out there either. That's why I think you can be encouraged by this Colts team, because if that's the worst you're going to see this Colts team all summer, or excuse me, all fall and into the winter months, I mean, that's pretty good. That's fighting for a playoff spot. And I think if you're being realistic, the Colts probably aren't going to be Super Bowl contenders, but if they get in the playoffs and they're hot at the right time, who knows? They could go on a little bit of a run. So I think while the loss does sting, if you're a Colts fan, I think you can be really encouraged with what you saw yesterday out of Anthony Richardson, out of the offensive line, out of what you saw from Alec Pierce, from this pass rush of the Indianapolis Colts. We didn't even really talk about Latu, but Latu, I think, had a 20% pass rush win rate to go along with what NFL Nerd was kind of asking about earlier, and that's only going to get better and we're going to see more of an impact as Latu plays more snaps. I think he only played 30 snaps yesterday, so as he gets his feet wet, that's going to improve. Adonai Mitchell is going to be a bigger part of the game. Michael Pittman is going to be a bigger part of the game as well. This Colts team, you can be encouraged by a lot of things, that this Colts team almost beat the defending AFC South champions, and they weren't playing their best game either yesterday. So if you're a Colts fan, I think you can take solace in that.
Yeah, there's plenty of silver linings that come from this, all the way from Anthony Richardson's performance, all the way to, a couple guys on defense there. So I think if there is one cause for concern, it is the run defense. But I do like what you said, that it could have just been like you're dealing with a team that was hungrier than the Colts, I think, up front. You see the tape a lot. I mean, it just looked like once they got to Zaire Franklin, I mean, it doesn't matter if you have Fred Warner. It doesn't matter if you have EJ Speed. You take an offensive lineman and you get them to the second level against a linebacker. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You could have Arlington Hambright in there, and he'll probably win that matchup against any linebacker in the NFL. So I think that there's a lot of things the Colts can improve on, and I think that they do have a matchup coming up where if it turns out that the starting quarterback for the Packers, Jordan Love, can't play, you might be able to have a bounce-back opportunity there.
Yeah, I agree. And then we got another super chat here from Patrick. And then I want to ask you a question, Drake, before we move on. So Patrick, again, thank you so much for all of the super chats, brother. All of your support, really, really do appreciate it. Two plays that would have no one talking about poor defensive back play. Brents gets a toe in rather than a heel on the interception. Cross gets his head around and plays the ball and breaks up the Stroud bomb down the field. Exactly. I didn't even mention that. And I didn't even think about that. So that's a great point. But Drake, the interception by Juju Brents that was almost interception called out of bounds. And then when Stroud throws the interception to Kenny Moore, when there was a hold, and it was an obvious hold on Jalen Jones that was called, but that's two interceptions right there that were called back. That the Colts this year, if those interceptions, if Brents is able to get his foot down and Jalen Jones doesn't hold, so that way that Kenny Moore interception stands. You're talking about this secondary picking off Stroud twice and having a phenomenal game. That's how close this game really is. It's always a game of inches, but when you look at it that way, Drake, it's kind of crazy to think of how close things could have been between people saying that the secondary had a bad game or weren't playing at their best to the secondary had a really good first game of the year.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a matchup that I am just so high on. I mean, you've got precision versus athleticism and explosiveness, and then you've got defense versus offense with the coaches. Houston versus Indy is going to be a hell of a rivalry. I can't wait. And yes, that game was very close. And I think Juju Brents, despite the fact that it was an incompletion, what a hell of an athletic play. And then Kenny Moore, that interception, totally legal. And it was just an incredible veteran move where he used just enough of that movement to get the receiver out of the way and just like took the ball away. It was so great.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, I mean, there's a comment in the chat that you can't yank the wide receiver out of the way. Flag wasn't called on Kenny Moore; it was called on Jalen Jones away from him.
Yeah.
Flag wasn't called on Kenny Moore, who got the interception. So I don't know what that comment's about. But Patrick,
it's that you tried it though and got away with it.
Patrick, thank you so much for all of your support, brother. Really, really do appreciate it. But Drake, before we kind of move on here, I wanted to ask you of all the things that the Colts did wrong yesterday. Looking at Anthony Richardson kind of missing some throws, not being able to run the football very well, allowing Stroud to kind of escape and create and make plays, the run defense, obviously. What do you think is going to be the easiest thing for the Colts to improve moving forward out of those things? And what do you think is going to be the hardest thing for the Colts to improve moving forward?
I think the easiest thing will be getting Richardson to hit the underneath throws because he has the capabilities to do it. I just do not think that he is going to whiff underneath throws as he continues to develop. Okay. I think that the fact that he targeted Mitchell 5 times in Mitchell's first ever game and only hit him once in Richardson's second game since, I don't know, almost a year ago, that right there is just a communication and repetitions thing. That's what it says to me. The more that they work together, that's going to be 3 and 4 completions out of 5 targets. Mark my words. So I think that Richardson's completion percentage and underneath throws, gimme throws, those will get short up quicker than my thing. The hardest thing is that run defense because you had Buckner, you had Stewart. I don't care if Buckner played injured. He also has had games where he's had 2 sacks with a broken ulna or like a fractured ulna. So the guy, injuries don't mean anything to DeForest Buckner until he's on the report to me. So I think that you really need to shore up that run defense, and God forbid if you have to turn to Taven Bryan. So
we all know my thoughts on Taven Bryan, but I do think that the easiest will be those intermediate throws that Anthony Richardson needs to hit on, but I think it might take I don't know if this is even going to make sense, but it might take the longest to do just because it might take him to get into a rhythm. But I think eventually that is a guarantee that it is going to happen.
It's an easy idea. It just takes time.
Easy idea. Not as easy in execution, but so I think it's going to take time. It's just going to take reps. I want to also agree with you on the run defense and that it might be challenging, but I hope I'm wrong in that regard because I think if this run defense becomes a major problem for the Colts, then the defense has a very big problem on their hands that I don't think we were really expecting coming into the season. But again, overall, I think even in a loss, I think if you're a Colts fan, you can be encouraged by a lot of the things that you saw yesterday and you now know that you always have a shot at a game, at winning a game when Anthony Richardson is in there at quarterback. Let's run through the injury report real quick, Drake. Only 3 names on the injury report. Obviously, Josh Downs and Matt Gay did not play on Sunday. Josh Downs still dealing with the ankle injury, Matt Gay with the hernia. Downs could return this week against the Packers. It'll be interesting to see if he does play on, or if he does practice on Wednesday. And Matt Gay did kick last week. Not exactly sure what his status is, but Spencer Schrader did just fine in relief of Matt Gay. Albeit that Spencer Schrader didn't really get any opportunities to kick field goals. He was perfect on all of his extra point attempts.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Spencer Schrader, I really do. I think that you can, to a degree, plug in a kicker for a few games. Okay, I think you can get by, but like, you really need Josh Downs back out there. I know A.D. Mitchell kind of was serviceable in the slot, and he actually, by all regards, destroyed his competition and got open in the slot. So it's even more intriguing to see what will happen once they can use both Mitchell and Downs. But yeah, I think that you want Downs back in that slot position as soon as possible.
Yeah, I would agree. He just adds a different element to this offense. And then the only player that popped up on the injury report from yesterday's game, it was a big one. It was DeForest Buckner. He did leave the game with a back injury, did need a little bit of assistance off the field yesterday. But in the locker room, Buckner said that he thought he was going to be good to go. Shane Steichen today said that Buckner was progressing well, was getting treatment on his back, and that he was hopeful that Buckner would be able to go against the Green Bay Packers. So we've seen Buckner play through a lot, Drake. He's a very, very tough player. So I think I would be a little bit surprised if Buckner doesn't go. But again, still something to monitor, because DeForest Buckner is by far and away the best defensive player on this Colts team, and maybe the best player, period, on this team.
I think that DeForest Buckner is one of the toughest SOBs I've ever seen play football. So again, him and Quentin Nelson, unless they have a horrific injury, which a fractured ulna is pretty horrific, still played. Unless it's something crazy, I just expect him to play. So I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I hope you're right. We'll have to definitely monitor it as the week goes along. No news and rumors here for the Colts as of this past weekend. So we're gonna dive into our annual. Since we're back to the regular season, Drake, it's time for our Colts players of the game. So Drake and I always give out a Colts player of the game who we thought performed the best, whether it's a win or a loss. We still give out the Colts player of the game award. So for week 1, Drake, let me hear it. Who is your Colts player of the game?
I'll go against the grain. I'll go DeForest Buckner. I thought DeForest Buckner on defense, he was disruptive. He stopped it in the run. He had a tackle for loss, 6 tackles, 5 alone, 1.5 sacks. It doesn't matter if he's 30, 31, 23, 45. He just makes plays.
Listen, you are not going to hear me debate against DeForest Buckner. DeForest Buckner had a hell of a game yesterday. But my defense, my Colts player of the game, it's going to Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce, hell of a performance. 3 catches, 125 yards, and a touchdown. Was really, I think, hopefully shut a lot of people up yesterday, being able to go out there and show his deep threat ability once again for Anthony Richardson. And hopefully this propels Alec Pierce to have a career year in a Colts uniform, not only for himself, but if he does, this Colts offense is going to be taken to another level by having another deep threat and another weapon out there that's going to be consistent in helping this offense. So Alec Pierce is my Colts player of the game.
I was just going to say, Alec Pierce has the ability now, after that performance, he might not even need to make catches happen to stretch the defense and allow underneath opportunities.
Exactly. So the Colts dropped their first game against the Houston Texans. Definitely not the best way to start a season, 0-1, but the Colts have done it a lot recently and have been able to rebound, and they've got a big opportunity coming up this weekend against the Green Bay Packers. And that's our show for this evening, guys. Really, really appreciate everybody tuning in and talking through what we saw this weekend as the Colts took on the Houston Texans. Want to give a shout out to our super chats, Truett and Patrick, the CFO. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. Really really, really do appreciate it. Hey, Drake's back. There we go. And then shout out to everybody else that joined us this evening. We're always happy to talk Colts football with all of you. Again, please be sure to go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts_SI on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. And make sure you turn your notifications on so you never miss us and you never miss an episode of the Shoehorn Podcast with Noah Jaber. And then wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star review on that as well, so we can continue to reach other Colts fans just like you. And Drake, as always, has been writing away all weekend, giving you guys the latest content for the Indianapolis Colts. Tell the people what they need to go check out.
So lots of stuff on our channel. Go check out all of our writers. But I released 3 stock up. So the 3 guys that are going to that I think from here on out after this game are going to be able to use this momentum to maybe have a better season than initially projected. So that's one. And then, of course, my 3 good and 3 bad. So go check those out when you get a chance.
Definitely good pieces to go give a read. Myself, obviously wrote about Anthony Richardson and his game. And really, I mean, he talked after the game, and while he was disappointed, it was interesting to hear his thoughts and what went into some of those specific plays, like the deep touchdown to Alec Pierce, the rushing touchdown he had on 4th down, and even talking about some of his misses to Adonai Mitchell. So talked a lot about that, but I really do think that what we saw yesterday was a glimpse of the future for Anthony Richardson and this Colts team. One word: explosive. So definitely check that out, as well as everything else by our talented writers, as Drake said, horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back Thursday night to get you all set for the Week 2 matchup between the Indianapolis Colts and the Green Bay Packers. As Jordan Love doesn't look like he'll play, gives the Colts a golden opportunity to steal one on the road. So make sure you tune in on Thursday night as we get you set for Week 2. But Colts fans, go watch Monday Night Football. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you right back here to talk more Colts football very, very soon.